Get started. I think you can see the results. So the majority folks are on a PC, but we have some Mac users, tablet users, a fair number of iPhone. Great, thanks everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again today for a great session, again with Maria Kemplin and Christina Bard from the University of Kentucky. Part two of our transportation presentation. Today, Maria is going to be talking about rideshare. And a couple of housekeeping items before I turn it over to Christina and Maria to talk a little bit about themselves and their program. As many of you know, we offer CRC credits for all of these webinars. Tomorrow, you'll get an email from us asking you to complete an evaluation of the webinar and also with instructions about how you can obtain your CRC credit. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end before we close out the webinar. So with that, I will turn it over to Maria and Christina to talk a bit about themselves and their program. So Maria and Christina.
Thank you, Terry. I hope everyone can hear me okay. My name is Christina Espinosa Bard, and I work at the Human Development Institute at the University of Kentucky. And we are one of the Project E3 partners, and we have projects running in rural and remote communities of both Oregon and Kentucky. So being in specifically rural and remote communities, we knew early on that transportation is a major barrier to employment and community participation for people with disabilities, and that we wanted to focus some of our project activities directly on transportation and working to find some strategies that could help address that. So as our project developed, we decided to start with a pilot in a county that we had developed some solid and diverse relationships. So we hired a community consultant from that county, so someone who is deeply invested and connected within that county, as someone who could help us really further those connections. And we started with actually 2 community conversations on the topic of transportation. So we invited everyone that we could come up with from that county that either touches disability, that touches providing resources, that is part of the civic community there to participate in those meetings. We also invited religious leaders, people from all different organizations. And so that has really developed into this monthly work group that we hold in that county around transportation. And as we continue doing that, HDI was able to bring on Maria Kemplin in a position that focused solely on transportation. So Maria has been a real asset and has become a true specialist around transportation. She's learned the complex system, how our state transportation plan works, what waivers require and are required to provide, how to write plans, and then just the infrastructure of the county and state providers and brokers of transportation. So we are very grateful to have her knowledge base and her leadership in moving forward towards developing some really helpful trainings and modules, some plans of action, and then also just some resources for our rural partners towards finding some transportation solutions. So that's where we stand. Maria's in process of developing a long and comprehensive list, and she has done several already. But we just wanted to thank the E3 webinar team for having us again.
Thanks, Christine. So we will start Maria's recording presentation. We've given the quirks these days with so many people on the internet, it felt better to record it that we wouldn't have any dropouts potentially with that. So
It's not playing yet, Terry. Will you be broadcasting it, or should one of us share it from our screen?
I'll be sharing.
My name is Maria Kumplin, and I'm here today with Project E3TC and the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute. I've been at the university for 17 years, and for the past year, I've worked on a transportation initiative funded by the Commonwealth Council on Developmental Disabilities. Accessible transportation is an area of concern for me, both professionally and personally. I am the parent of a 15-year-old son with a developmental disability and epilepsy, and as a result, he will not be able to drive. Transportation solutions so that he can work and participate fully in the community are very important to me on a personal level. I wanted to start with a framework for today's talk. We are all learners, and all ways of learning are valued. Information shared verbally will also be shown in text on my slides. And I want you to think of today as building a toolkit. There's no one simple solution, unfortunately, when it comes to transportation. We have to arm ourselves with as many tools in that toolkit and seek new uses for old tools. So today we're talking about rideshare. What is a rideshare? Well, a rideshare is a way that drivers who are going to a destination can offer to share the trip with others who need to travel to the same or nearby locations. A rideshare can be set up between 2 or more people, and rideshare participants can take turns driving, or one person may drive every commute. Since the invention of cars, people have shared rides. Rideshare enabled people to take jobs and opportunities that were previously not possible. In this photo from 1944, co-workers share a ride to their job working the night shift at a factory. During the oil embargo of the 1970s, 1 in 5 American workers shared a ride to their job with a coworker. But rideshare statistics decreased as more people owned their own car. By 2015, 9 out of 10 people drive alone in a car to work. Why rideshare? Well, to save money. The average car consumes 550 gallons of gas each year. Ride sharing allows you to share the cost of gas and parking with other riders. The more participants in your ride share, the more you save. For a person who commutes more than 12 miles to work, sharing gas expenses with even just one rider can add up to a savings of $1,500 per year. Why rideshare? To reduce pollution. Fewer cars on the road mean less greenhouse gas emissions linked to respiratory effects, cardiovascular disease, and allergies. By ride sharing, you help improve air quality and reduce health risks for yourself and future generations. Why rideshare? Less stress. Research suggests that a rideshare is less stressful than commuting alone. Why rideshare? To reduce traffic. Every rideshare participant takes another car off the road, which means less congested roads and highways. Why rideshare? To use the fast lane. Many major cities have carpool lanes that are reserved for cars with 2 or more passengers. These lanes have less traffic, leading to faster commute times for those who rideshare. Why rideshare? To save time. The average American spends 434 hours in their car each year. Participating in a rideshare allows you to check and answer email, read the news, check bank balances, or even close your eyes for a few minutes before starting your day. Why rideshare? To offer options. Where public transit service is limited or non-existent, ride-sharing may be the best option available for individuals who don't drive to get to work or school. Ride-sharing is a great way to provide a benefit to ourselves and others. Why rideshare? To create community. Ride-sharing is a great way to make new friends. Let's have a learning stop. True or false? Ride-sharing is a way that drivers who are going to a destination can offer to share the trip with others who need to travel to the same or nearby locations. So of course this is true. True or false? As of 2015, 9 out of 10 people drive alone in a car to work. Unfortunately, this is true. So how do we create rideshare agreements? First, envision your rideshare needs. Are you a potential rider, driver, or both? You can write up an ad so that you have something clear to communicate. Let's look at creating a rideshare plan for Sam. So we worked with Sam to create a sample plan, and it reads, I want a part-time job. My job coach told me to think about transportation. I want to ask family, friends, neighbors, and people at church to help me start a rideshare. Having a job will allow me to chip in up to 50 cents per mile for a ride. The first few weeks, vocational rehabilitation will help with the cost. Once I start making a paycheck, I'll pay for my rideshare myself. I will make a budget for my rides. We also worked with creating a rideshare plan with Tony. And Tony writes, I work the day shift at Cooper Manufacturing. With a child in daycare, my budget is tight. One way I can balance my budget is through a rideshare. I can pick up a coworker near my home or on the way to my child's daycare. They can help with my gas expenses. I'll talk to my boss to see if he will mention it at our next shift meeting. I can also ask to put up a sign in the break rooms. So find participants. Let people know you are starting a rideshare. You may be able to get ride offers or find passengers quicker than you think. Rideshare suggestions with friends and neighbors. Well, you can write a short note to send to friends and family. You can post a social media message. You can talk to neighbors. And you can speak with connections at your church or organization. What about rideshare suggestions at work? You can talk to your boss about making an announcement at a meeting. You can post a flyer in the break room or restroom. You can talk to your human resource officer about sending an email. To set rideshare rules, you can think about what are the pickup and drop-off locations? How long will the rideshare wait if someone is late? How will rideshare participants notify each other? Is gas reimbursement done weekly or monthly? How will cancellations or sick days be handled? And then you can map it. You can use a mapping tool to plan the best route, to set leave times, and to calculate mileage. To set the rideshare rates, consider the payment a rideshare and not taxable income. The rider fee must fall under the IRS mileage reimbursement rate. To view the current IRS mileage reimbursement rate, you can go to irs.gov. Now I've looked this up for us, and for 2020, the current mileage reimbursement rate per the IRS is up to 57.5 cents per mile. Rideshare courtesy. The driver controls the radio and the temperature in the car. Passengers don't make conversation unless the driver initiates it. Don't eat or drink in the car unless the driver says that you may. Don't give or take a ride if you're sick and contagious. And if you are the driver, don't make extra stops unless the riders agree. Now it's important to make a backup plan. On occasion, things may come up. A driver may be sick, a car may break down, or other conflicts may come up. A backup plan might include a family member who can pitch in on occasion, another coworker who could help out, requesting a day off work, or money set aside for a taxi. Now you can make it official. Drivers and riders may wish to sign a rideshare agreement so that arrangements and expectations are clear. And you can see our sample rideshare agreement that we have available on the website for more assistance. So let's take a quick learning stop. Which of the following is true when considering a rideshare arrangement as non-taxable income? A. The automobile must not have a commercial sign. B. The rider may not pay more than the IRS mileage reimbursement rate per mile. C. The driver must not have a business license. And D. All of the above. Well, the correct answer is B. In order for payments between a rideshare rider and the driver to not be considered taxable income, the reimbursement rate just needs to not be more than the IRS mileage reimbursement per mile. Rideshare frequently asked questions. So rideshare, is it a business? A rideshare is not a business. Rideshare drivers who are reimbursed no more than the IRS mileage reimbursement rate per mile, which was 57.5 cents per mile in 2020, are not operating as a business. So with a rideshare, do I need auto insurance? Well, yes. All vehicles on the road must be insured. However, ride sharing does not require a commercial insurance policy. Rideshare riders are considered car passengers, just like in any automobile trip. So are rideshare payments taxable income? Rideshare payments are not taxable income. Ride sharing just helps riders and drivers share transportation expenses. A rider reimburses the driver in an amount equal to or less than the cost of the drive. By staying under the IRS mileage reimbursement rate, reimbursement to a driver does not qualify as taxable income. So let's take another learning stop. True or false? The automobile used in a rideshare arrangement must have commercial automobile insurance. Well, this is false. If you're operating a rideshare and you're not operating it as a business, in other words, you're staying below the federal reimbursement rate, then the automobile used does not require any type of special automobile insurance. True or false? Payments to a rideshare driver are considered taxable income by the IRS. This is false. Payments to a rideshare driver up to 57.5 cents per mile as of 2020 are not considered taxable income by the IRS. So how do we assist with rideshare planning? Well, there are rideshare planning tools available on HDI's transportation website at transportation.hdiuky.org. You can download a rideshare sign-up sheet and use the sign-up sheet to gather names, addresses, and information. You can also download a rideshare planning spreadsheet. And you can use this rideshare planning Excel file to manage participant information. Names, addresses, contact numbers, and other information may be collected in the spreadsheet. You can use that information to create a digital rideshare map. So go to Google Maps at www.google.com/maps and enter your city to create a map. Click Add a Layer and import the Excel spreadsheet that you've created. When asked which columns for place marks, choose Home Address. When asked which columns for labels, choose Name. Google Maps will import the Excel file names and addresses, creating a custom digital map of your rideshare participants. This custom digital map can be shared with the rideshare drivers. You can also download a rideshare agreement. Make it official. Use the sample rideshare agreement or customize your own to set clear expectations for rider and driver. So let's take another learning stop. True or false? Tools are available to assist with rideshare planning on the transportation website at transportation.hdiuky.org. So this is true, and it's a plug for my website. Let's talk about using Waze carpool. While ride sharing is not new, and this is a great photo showing in the 1940s how businesses used ride boards to set up arrangements for ride sharing between employees. Rideshare apps are a new way to share rides and the cost of commuting. Waze Carpool is an app that lets you drive or ride with people already going your way. Drivers and riders with similar commutes to work or school can team up and ride together through the app. Unlike taxi apps like Uber or Lyft, Waze Carpool does not pay drivers or charge a commission on rides. So how does it work? With Waze Carpool, riders pay no more than the IRS reimbursement rate per mile to the driver. Drivers do not earn taxable income or pay any fees. The app use is limited to 2 trips per day. And Waze Carpool uses advertisements in the app to make money. Drivers use the Waze app, and you may already be familiar with the Waze app to avoid traffic, police, or hazards. The Waze app is currently number 2 in the navigation category on iTunes. And the app is free. So riders would need to download to share the basics. Your home and work address in Waze Carpool are kept private and only shared when you accept a carpool match. Drivers can verify the work or school email address to be matched only with coworkers from their employer or with classmates from their school. And it uses that verified email address to make those matches. Drivers can specify the number of available seats and car make and model to make it easier for the rider to find. And riders can see driver ratings and compare mileage reimbursement rate of available drivers. You can make profile settings. Drivers can set their ride rules within the profile on the app on topics such as chatting, smoking, and having pets in the car. Offering or accepting rides is as simple as clicking in the app. Drivers can review the carpool calendar and set their availability in advance. So what if you have a day off? Waze Carpool allows users to set which days they would like to rideshare and simply click on a button to turn off days that they don't. You can limit your matches to show only co-workers or classmates, riders of the same gender, or people with whom you share mutual friends. Waze and Waze Carpool allow you to invite friends to join the app. Sending invites helps you increase your chances of finding a ride within your network. And part of the invite feature allows you to get money into your account when you invite friends and they join. So how do invites work? Friends you invite to Waze Carpool get a $20 gift. And you get $20 when they complete a Waze ride. You can get up to 10 gifts, and that's $200 when you get your friends carpooling. Now, how does ride payment work? All payments are handled through the app. Drivers can transfer out their payments each month. Waze processes payments through Google Pay. So you can connect your bank account to Google Pay to easily transfer those funds. Riders can connect their method of payment, including Able account cards, as a payment source. So to set the ride rates, as the driver, you would adjust the rideshare cost using the sliding button, and you can slide your rate up to the maximum IRS reimbursement rate, which is currently about 58 cents per mile. Now there are a few limits with Waze Carpool. Waze Carpool will only match a driver with passengers for 2 trips per day. So that's a to and from work scenario each day. Waze carpool drivers may not charge more than the IRS reimbursement rate, and participants must be 18 years of age or older. So let's do a learning stop. Multiple choice. Which of the following apps is used by rideshare drivers? Lyft, Uber, Waze, or Waze carpool? So the answer is C, Waze. So if you are interested in driving in a rideshare match, you would sign up using the Waze app. Which of the following apps is used by rideshare riders? Waze, Uber, Waze carpool, or Lyft? So the answer is C, Waze carpool. If you are interested in riding using the Waze carpool system, you would download the Waze carpool app to be matched as a rider. I wanted to talk about how we can partner with Waze carpool. Think about community-based supports. Ride-sharing services like Waze carpool can help individuals develop community-based transportation supports, especially in areas where public transit options do not exist. How can agencies, employers, schools, and service professionals partner with Waze carpool? Well, there's a website for that. If you look at partnering with Waze carpool, employers or groups can complete the steps to partner with Waze carpool through the website. Santa Monica College partnered with Waze carpool, and in the first month, 800 students, faculty, and staff signed up. In partnering with Waze carpool, you have access to metrics. There's no cost to partner with Waze carpool, and business partners or schools or agencies gain access to metrics on the impact of their rideshare initiative. So consider creating Waze carpool groups. Carpool groups can be created easily within the Waze app. These groups remain private and require an invitation. Groups can be created for clubs, agencies, employers, schools, churches, civic organizations, even neighborhoods. In carpool groups, you add members by invitation within the app, through email or text message, or by using an invite code. Carpool group members can participate in more than one carpool group. You can see I've created carpool groups. For myself in the Waze app, I'm in an HDI Coldstream carpool, a carpool group with Autistics United Kentucky, and an HDI campus carpool group. Let's take a learning stop. So who could benefit from creating Waze carpool groups? A, an employer, B, an advisory board, C, a college or university, D, a self-advocacy organization, or E, all of the above. Well, I think E, all of the above, could benefit from creating Waze carpool groups. What is a benefit of partnering with Waze carpool? Free pizza, free gift cards, tax credits, or access to data about your initiative? So the answer to this question is D, access to data about your initiative. Let's look at Uber and Lyft. So Uber and Lyft, are these ride-sharing apps? Although often they call themselves ride-share services, Uber and Lyft drivers essentially operate as private taxis. Uber and Lyft passengers are not sharing a ride with someone who owns a car and is going in the same direction. Instead, Uber and Lyft drivers provide fee-for-service transportation. Uber and Lyft are both for-profit, publicly traded companies. And under their profit-based model, Uber processes over 14 million rides per day across the United States and leads all ride-sharing companies with a staggering $62 billion net worth. Lyft's estimated value is $23 billion. So what are the pros and cons of Uber and Lyft? Since Uber and Lyft don't have to maintain fleet cars or pay for commercial insurance, their rates can be cheaper than a taxi. But during surge pricing, when ride demand is high, Uber and Lyft rides can cost as much or more than a city taxi. Uber and Lyft, where available, operate 24/7. However, these apps do not have drivers available in all locations. And finding accessible vehicles in Uber or Lyft can be problematic. So the bottom line, looking at Uber and Lyft, the average trip cost is $2 per mile. The minimum fare ranges from $4 to $7 just to initiate that Uber or Lyft trip. Short trips end up being more expensive per mile than longer trips, and a rider traveling just a few blocks will pay the same minimum as one riding 3 to 4 miles. Let's take a learning stop. True or false? The average cost of Uber or Lyft is $2 per mile, and the ride minimum averages $7 to $10. True. So finally, I wanted to share with you a rideshare savings calculator. For a person with longer than average commutes, so say more than 12 miles one way, who is carpooling 250 days a year, the potential savings in a two-person carpool will exceed $1,500. We've created a way for you to calculate potential savings using a rideshare savings calculator. This is a really cool tool, and it's available on our website for the Transportation Initiative. You can find it at transportation.hdiyuky.org/rideshare. So using this tool, you would use the slider buttons to enter the commute distance, the average gas mileage for your vehicle, the current price of gas, any parking fees or tolls that you pay on your commute, the anticipated wear and tear rate on your vehicle, and the number of days you commute per month. The Rideshare Savings Calculator will display your anticipated monthly and yearly commute cost and the potential savings based on the number of participating riders. And there's a slider for you to choose how many participating riders you would like, so you can see the savings benefit as the number of riders increases. So one final learning stop. What information is needed to use the Rideshare Savings Calculator? The commute distance in miles, the miles per gallon average of the vehicle, the current cost per gallon of gas, or all of the above. And of course, the answer is all of the above. So that brings us to the end of the recorded presentation. And I'm available live right now for questions if anyone in the audience has a question. So if you'll just type in those questions using the system platform, I'll be happy to answer those for you live at this time. Thanks.
So hi, this is Maria, and I'm live now, broadcasting from my house. There are already some questions in the Q&A box, so I wanted to take a few minutes and read those. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to type those in. For those of you who might not want to type, we're also going to allow a pause, and if there's time, I'll get some verbal questions, because I know not everybody might be able to type into the Q&A box. So I'll get started, and one of the first questions is the Waze Carpool app accessible for blind and visually impaired folks? So this is a great question. Waze Carpool is accessible with screen readers, and a close friend of mine, she's a teenager, and she's using the Waze Carpool app with a screen reader. Now, depending on different user interfaces and the technology you use, the platform you use, things can be better or worse as a user experience. But in the last year, Waze has invested an 18-month process where they worked on making the user interface more accessible and better with screen readers. So I think that's one of those things where your mileage will vary with how your experience is with it, but they are working on that. So if it's something where on a phone you're not having a good experience, you might try using an iPad instead and see if you have better luck. So I'm going to mark that question answered. Oh, it's not on me. Okay, so I have another question. Is Waze Carpool available in Wisconsin? So the Waze Carpool app is national. And if you're a driver, you would use the Waze app. And that's the same app that you would use if you were looking to avoid traffic, or if you wanted to know where the police are on your route. So a lot of us already use that Waze app. That's available across the United States. And there's a section in it where you would go in and set yourself up if you're interested in being a Waze driver. Now, I want to point this out because this is really cool. You can use your employer's email address. So in my case, it's a university. And I can select on there to only be matched with riders at my place of employment. So I wouldn't see riders from other employers if I choose to select that to only be matched with other employees at my same, and it uses your email address to match that. You can choose to turn that off or on depending on who you would like to ride share with. And what it uses is it uses your business email address. So if you go in and set this up, you may already have created a profile on Waze using a private email address. But if you want to use that feature, you'll want to go in and set it up instead with a business email address. You can also use it with a school email address. We have a lot of students that commute to community colleges from more rural areas into town, and they have been able to use their school email address and be matched with people that are going to that same destination. Now, if you're interested in riding, you would use the Waze carpool app. This is a separate app that you would download. And so when you go in and sign up, this is something that's available across the United States, but the number of drivers is going to depend on people in your community that sign up. So it's one of those things where you want to network and you want to reach out to people. Waze Carpool allows you to send an invite code and create groups. So that's a way that you can try to draw in people into a network and build capacity in that way. So I hope that answers that question. So someone asks if in the state vocational system, would a rideshare driver be considered an ISP, individual service provider? Well, I'm not in the OVR system, but it sounds like an ISP would be like a business provider, and rideshare is not a business. As long as you charge less than that federal mileage reimbursement rate, there is no business transaction occurring. And so those payments would not be any type of reportable taxable income. Okay, I have someone asking, if a person lives way out in the country but works in town 16 miles, what are their options to get from point A to point B? Well, this is a really good question. And I grew up in a rural area and I commuted to college into the city, 32 miles. And I understand that for a lot of folks, this is, it's difficult to find someone to commute with. And fortunately, I won't say how long ago I was in college, but I will say it was before we had Facebook or instant messaging, or I think even before email. So that's been a while. But now we have an opportunity to connect with more people and expand our networks. And that might be a person that's looking for a ride. They may not have Facebook, or they may not have an internet connection, but they may have someone in their church or in their support network or in an agency that they work with or in an advocacy group where they can reach out their message and try to share that. One of the Waze groups that I started is for a autistic self-advocacy organization that I participate in. And so the rideshare system is a way to connect with your natural supports. And we talk a lot about using natural supports, and it's very important. One part of that equation, I think we don't do a strong enough job all the time of educating people that natural supports, this is a relationship that you have with someone where there are rules of the road, there's courtesy, there's doing your part to pitch in. And so I think sometimes for folks, natural supports like family members dry up because someone's needing a ride and it's costly, and maybe that family member is on a tight budget themselves. And so working with folks to understand budgeting for transportation and gas reimbursement, and also having neutral ways to do that, folks that are able to do that through an app, it's a lot easier than asking someone, you know, outright, are you going to pay me for the week? You know, if you do that through an app, it makes it a lot easier. Again, not everyone's going to have access to that technology, but I think to use those supports available on the website to create an agreement before you start a ride share, to talk about courtesy in a ride share. These may be part of that hidden curriculum for some folks where we just don't realize that we shouldn't talk the whole time during a commute. You know, sometimes we need to be reminded of that. And I think it's good to get that structure in place so that everybody's happy with the arrangement. So there's a question. Let me go scroll down through here. Do I know of any public secondary schools using this model? I know that Santa Clara College is using it. If you go to the Waze Carpool Partner website, they have a lot of information about their partnering. I've been really impressed with what Waze Carpool is trying to accomplish for the community. Now that said, Waze Carpool is making money using advertising. So it's kind of a thing where their platform helps people, but also they're getting that advertising in. Okay, someone asks, it sounds like Waze Carpool allows the passenger to set up a standing ride or week by week. I'm thinking of people working in retail in which their schedule changes week to week. Can you select your ride shares each week if you want? So Jackie asks this, and it's a great question. And the answer is you can even go in day by day and change that. When I go into the app, I can look at my groups and I can see folks that are wanting a ride each day or further into the week. I can turn it off as a driver if I'm driving that day or not. If I'm interested as a passenger, and I have ridden as a passenger before, and I've ridden with people that I know and with people that I don't know in my neighborhood, or also going to the same, to the university. So you can go in and you can set that, you can look at it daily, you can set it advance weekly, you can ride with someone just once. If you don't like someone that you're riding with, you can hide them and then not ride with them again. So there's a lot of options in the tool. So Karen asks a really good question about if this app provides information regarding access for people who are wheelchair users or have other types of disabilities that require assistive devices? This is a really great question. It's important. And at this time, the answer is no, there's not. Waze Carpool just does not have the capacity yet in the app for a wheelchair user indicator. However, what I've suggested with groups of people that I work with, I know a number of people who have accessible vehicles. And some of them have even thought about doing an Uber or Lyft kind of scenario, but that's hard. Because to operate as an Uber or Lyft, you're really just open to the public, and there may not be the demand. So we've talked about creating those groups, especially with using self-advocacy groups that you belong to, and creating those groups so that people can work with each other to create those networks. Let me look at some other questions. Does Waze Carpool do any background screening of drivers? Waze Carpool is going to be like Uber or Lyft in that it's a rideshare board. If you think of this as like, I showed a photo in the slides from the 1940s of all the index cards where people could go in at the factory and see all the index cards with drivers. This is not a business where you are paying for a business service. This is just kind of an informal match. So they don't do any kind of screening. But if you're nervous, and obviously I would be, you can do your settings so that you're only being matched with people in groups that you know, friends of friends, people at your same email address for an employer's email address. And you can use those invite codes to blast out a request to a bunch of people in your network and see if you can create some, you may have friends of yours that are interested in saving up to $1,500 or more per year in ride sharing. But they're not the kind of folks that would do an Uber or Lyft themselves. So that's a good way to create matches, is by using that advertising piece. So I have someone asking about using rideshare and having a waiver. And can waiver dollars pay for the mileage reimbursement rate? So that's a really good question. I know that you can use money that's on your ABLE account. So if you have funds that are going into an ABLE account, my son has an ABLE account and we put money into it, and he can use that card to pay for rideshare in the app. Now, I don't know, depending on each state is different and what waiver you receive, it's really going to look different depending on whether Medicaid is going to give you budget that you can use for transportation. Kentucky has, I think, 9 waivers. One of those waivers does have a budget that allocates, I think it's $264 per month for transportation services. But not all of the waivers are going to give that kind of upfront budget. And I think I've answered most of the questions. Someone asks, I would hope that guide dog users are able to travel with rideshare. My son has a service dog, so this is a great question, Lorraine. And that is a setting on the app that you're able to indicate whether or not that you welcome. They call it a pet setting. But with my son having a service dog, we also know that a good friend of ours has cystic fibrosis, and at times she's on oxygen, and it's not good for her to be around dog hair. So, there are folks that would not want to have that setting turned on, and there are other people who would. So I do like that that's part of the Waze carpool app, because it's something that we find important. So we have another good question about insurance. Would we recommend for the passenger to have some sort of insurance coverage? And Jackie writes, I know on my policy, I get medical coverage if I am in someone else's car during an accident. But for a person who is not a car owner, how can they get coverage appropriate for them? So that's a good question. If you as an individual are underinsured, if you don't have access to, for example, Medicaid or the Affordable Care Act's expansion of Medicaid, if you don't have any sort of health insurance, chances are you may want to consider coverage of some type on an auto policy. I know that automobile insurers offer coverage that covers just if you're hurt in an accident, in an automobile accident, that they'll pay your hospitalization expenses. But then that's a catch-22, because if you're someone who can't afford the premiums for an insurance policy, that might not be accessible to you. So fortunately, there are some coverage for riders depending on what the driver's car insurance would offer. Kyle has offered a comment for us that I really appreciate. It says, playing with Waze Carpool using voiceover and finding it quite accessible for blind users. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I think that's most of the questions. I see one more question here. I'll take one more question, if that's okay with you, Terry, and then we'll wrap up. Could organizations incorporate Waze like area agency on agency use app? Can they be recruited? So I mentioned in the Waze app that you can create groups. And I've created groups myself for my employer, my office. I created a group for a self-advocacy organization that I belong to. And I've used those invite codes. Christina, that introduced me today, I sent her an invite when I first started playing with it, trying to get all my friends on the app. So I think this is something, if you, for example, are part of a Down syndrome agency, we have DSAC here in Central Kentucky. They might be interested in sending an email to all their DSAC members to join a group. And that would be a private group within the Waze app. And so rides would only be offered between members of that group. And within that group, they could limit it so they're not seeing any other drivers and they're not seeing any other riders. It's just a network on the app. And it's set up in a way where you don't have that personal interaction, where it's not a friend calling and saying, hey, can you give me a ride, where you feel on the spot. It's more of you're looking at the app and you can either do it or you can't, and you don't feel put on the spot. it also really helps through the app, the reimbursement process. So if you really don't need to be reimbursed for your gas mileage, you can slide the slider down. I've given people a ride and I slide the slider down to 5 cents per mile. I think it's good though to build in that routine of folks budgeting for transportation. Though I do think it's important to have an idea that when you're ride sharing, that you're sharing the cost. And so I think it's important to do that, you know, even if you're able to offer rides, to slide it back, and to build that routine.
Maria, you may
Yes.
not, you're trying to keep track of so many things. Brian asked a question, what about kids under 18? How do they use it? And I think it's, say, a high school student, or how might they use it? I know that you have to be 18, I believe, to drive from your presentation. So what's your familiarity with youth under the age of 18 and the Waze apps?
So I have put my child, who's 15, into a Waze app ride. I set it up, and then, you know, so the ride is set up under my name, and I've had him ride, but I'm doing that with trusted individuals. And obviously, the liability or the responsibility is on me as a parent. But I think that they're doing the 18 and under 18 thing because, you know, concerns about liability or concerns about responsibility for our young people. But if it's someone that I would let my child ride in a car with just as a friend, then obviously I'm comfortable with them using the Waze app also. So I would encourage parents to use that way of thinking. A parent may not want to put a 15-year-old in the car with a stranger, but definitely using those groups and your natural supports. And again, I want to reinforce that rideshare is a great way to use our natural supports, but we want to cultivate and sustain those natural supports with courtesy and with some rules and some expectations, and also sharing costs. Because if someone is always riding and they're never reimbursing or they're never sharing, then it can start to be a drain or a problem for the person providing the natural supports, you know, especially if their budget doesn't have room for that.
Great, Maria. I think that might be it. Great group of questions. We want to share a little bit of information, and since you so wonderfully, those of you that are attending, we also have another poll we're interested in on, which I'll leave up. We're interested in, we send you email, but some of you might prefer to get text. So we're interested to see how people like to get information from us. So a couple of pieces before we call it quits for today. As I've noted, we provide CRCs for all of our webinars. Tomorrow you will get an email from us that will have an evaluation link which you would like to complete, and it'll also give you directions about how to request the CRCs. The other part, I'll talk with Jennifer, who's on our staff. We'll work on adding the links that Maria gave in her presentation, and there might have been an additional link in the chat that we'll add to that as well, so that I know that they were put in the chat, but for those of you that maybe didn't get a chance to copy those down, we'll include those in the email we send out tomorrow as well. I think there were just a couple. Wanted to mention next week, Beth Newcomb, who's district manager for the North Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation, the general program, she's going to be presenting a webinar that she's titled 20 in 2020, Intentional Vision of Job Development. In addition, she is implementing, started last fall, with her entire staff on really focusing on 20 cases on every counselor caseload and working to help them find employment. So she's going to be talking about how she did that. That's for next week. Want to remind you again, the second part of our 3-part series on trauma-informed care will be May 21st. We're also working on a couple of additional, we have many other good ones coming up. We are also going to have some sessions on reentry for ex-offenders. We know that that's a common issue, clearly with VR caseloads, ex-offenders and working with them. And we're also working on some webinars around soft skills training. So with that, I believe we are done for today. Want to thank Maria and Christina again for a tremendous presentation. A reminder, these are all recorded. It takes us a week or two to get everything synced up between our captioning, although Maria's presentation more or less eliminated the need for captioning, which is a real interesting way to approach, which is really a nice way to approach it. But anyway, it takes us a week or so, maybe up to 2, to get everything organized. But again, it will be on the Project E3 website, and we'll include that in the email as well, where you can see this recording, all of our previous recordings. You can view all of our previous recordings, answer the evaluation, and get a CRC credit for those as well. So I don't think there's much else that I can think of at the moment. And again, a great thank you to Maria and Christina for taking the time for this presentation, and for all of you that attended. Please join us in the future for our additional and new, and we're also doing some of our greatest hits webinars as rebroadcasts. So again, thanks everybody, and we will hopefully see all of you and more of you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks, Maria.
Thanks, Christina.